All right. Let's see. How's the volume sound looking? Little volume deal. Looking like you could probably hear me. Nobody's even here yet. I just wanted to actually do this so that I have this recorded. Put on some tunes. Let's see here. Let's put on. Oh yeah, that'll be perfect. Let's do that. There we go. And so, first story from Zero Hedge, the 1st of December. Government now wants to seize your car for going 5 miles per hour over the limit. This is via sovereignman.com. We've discussed this on and off for several years now. Civil asset forfeiture is a legal process that allows the government to seize assets and cash from citizens without any due process or judicial oversight. You don't even have to be charged with a crime. You are assumed guilty unless you can somehow prove your innocence. Of course, not everyone has this ability. If you aren't local, state, or federal law enforcement, this is called stealing. You go to prison. But the government is actually a bigger problem than common thieves. A 2015 report showed that law enforcement used civil asset forfeiture to steal more from U.S. residents than every thief, robber, and burglar in America combined. About $4.5 billion worth of cash, cars, homes, and other property is taken by civil asset forfeiture each year. Hundreds of millions more than common criminals steal. And it happens at every level. Your local cop can use civil asset forfeiture, just like your state trooper. And then any one of the armed agents of the U.S. government, from the FBI to the Fish and Wildlife Service, can rob you for whatever reason they want. This travesty continues to grow because the cops who take your stuff get to keep it. Police departments and government agencies around the country depend on civil asset forfeiture to boost their budgets. Cops will literally keep some of the cars they take as squad cars, and they make a fortune auctioning off the houses, boats, and anything else they confiscate. Obviously, this gives cops an incentive to steal, whether or not they actually think the property was used in a crime or acquired illegally. Remember, civil asset forfeiture adds billions every year to their bottom line. On Wednesday, the Supreme Court, this is the good part, heard arguments in a case of civil asset forfeiture. Tyson Timbs was convicted of selling a small amount of drugs to an undercover police officer. He was sentenced to house arrest and paid about $1,200 in fines. But then police used civil asset forfeiture to take his '42,000 Land Rover, which Timbs purchased with money from a life insurance policy after his father died. The money did not come from selling drugs or any other illegal activity. Timbs sued, and the case made its way to the Supreme Court because every lower court in Indiana said the forfeiture was perfectly legit. The case revolves around whether or not the seizure of the Land Rover was an excessive fine under the Eighth Amendment, and whether or not this protection against excessive fines applies to state governments. And the public got some crazy insight into the government's position. The Indiana Solicitor General was arguing in favor of civil asset forfeiture when Justice Stephen Breyer asked him a hypothetical. Breyer asked, if a state needs revenue, could it force someone to forfeit their Bugatti, Mercedes, or Ferrari for speeding, even if they were going just 5 miles per hour over the speed limit. And the utterly appalling answer from the Indiana Solicitor General was yes. That's right. The official government position is that they can steal any amount of your property in connection with any crime whatsoever, no matter how trivial the crime may be, even exceeding the speed limit by 5 miles per hour. This is how overbearing and authoritarian the government has become in the land of the free. This is how much power your local cop has, and the power only grows as you go to state and federal officials. And if there is any solace in any of this, it is that the other Supreme Court justices were reportedly laughing at this exchange. The justices seemed incredulous that Indiana's top lawyers heard assertions and flimsy reasoning in this argument. For now, we can keep our cars if we get pulled over for speeding. Published on the 1st of December, government now wants to seize your car for going 5 miles per hour over the limit. All right, let's see what other tabs we have open. There's one that I absolutely wanted to cover because it was just way too well cited, if I recall correctly. Yes, there we go. Doodly doo-doo, yes. Breitbart.com. Hayward. Yes. Jamal Khashoggi, Muslim Brotherhood. This is the second or third of these that I've, but he's just like, stop it. Here's all the stuff about him, you know. So this one I want to make sure to read. The murder of Washington Post contributor Jamal Khashoggi at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in October prompted much debate over the writer's past affiliations and ideological inclinations. Responding to President Donald Trump's Tuesday statement on the killing, Katie Tour of MSNBC falsely claimed Khashoggi was never a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, but he indisputably was a member and a lifelong proponent of its Islamist ideals. Acknowledging this truth does not in any way condone his death at the hands of Saudi agents. And there we go. Tour's point was that everyone who mentions Khashoggi's brother, President Trump, is attempting to justify his murder. What they did, Jamal Khashoggi, that he say he was a part of the Muslim Brotherhood and that he was an enemy of the state. Those two things are not. It's interesting to put Saudi Arabian propaganda into a U.S. statement. The relevant passage from President Trump's statement on Tuesday read as follows. Representatives of Saudi Arabia say that Jamal Khashoggi was an enemy of the state and a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, but my decision is in no way based on that. This is an unacceptable and horrible crime. Ryan Saavedra of the Daily Wire posted the tour clip and noted that even the liberal Brookings Institute acknowledges Khashoggi was indeed a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. They actually made sure to have this exchange between Saavedra and Tour on there. And for some reason, my phone is just having the hardest time scrolling. This is just the most difficult thing in the world right now for it. All right. The October 19th Brookings Institute post, to which Saavedra referred, written by senior fellow Witts, was critical of pro-Saudi social media and right-wing commentators in the United States who implied Khashoggi was those who condemn his apparent murder as serving an Iranian agenda to break up the U.S.-Saudi alliance. The post is generally sympathetic to Katie Tour's point of view on the Khashoggi murder, and yet the very first substantive point made by joining the Muslim Brotherhood, and familiar with his work knows it, far from being a lie, as Tour falsely stated, Khashoggi's Brotherhood membership was a fact so widely known that it scarcely deserved mentioning. Yes, Jamal Khashoggi had many friends among the Muslim Brotherhood, and as his colleague David Ignatius reported days after his disappearance, had joined the movement himself as a young man before apparently shifting away from it later in his career. No one knew Jamal at all No one who knew Jamal at all was surprised by these facts, no matter what lurid framing they are now revealed. Whatever sympathies and associations he may have had, they do not change the apparent fact that Jamal Khashoggi was kidnapped, murdered, and dismembered to silence his freedom of expression. Those on the right, who have spent decades fighting for free speech on campus, will leap to tell you correctly that freedom of speech demands respect regardless of political valence of the views espoused, and that protecting the expression of unpopular views that challenge current political correctness is the acid test for the security of this right overall. So even if you believe that Jamal Khashoggi was a full-bore Brotherhood member with an agenda of Islamization for the Arab world, you should still condemn his apparent assassination for the crime of speaking his mind. The David Ignatius column cited by Witts was posted on October 12th at the Washington Post, which was understandably concerned by the ominous disappearance of its contributor. Like Witts, Ignatius strove to paint Khashoggi as a changed man who had a fiery youth but mellowed with age and became a worldly journalist instead of an Islamist agitator. But he did not deny Khashoggi's past. Khashoggi's intellectual interests were shaped in his early 20s when he studied in the United States. Interesting. Turkish, Arab citizen, Muslim Brotherhood, studied in the 20s, studied here in this, so that would have been the 80s or 70s. Okay. And was also a passionate member of the Muslim Brotherhood. I wonder where he went to school. Okay, the Brotherhood was a secret underground fraternity that wanted to purge the Arab world of the corruption and autocratic rule it saw as a legacy of Western colonialism. Note, autocratic. That's very important. Khashoggi was hardly alone in his belief. The flavor of that period in Khashoggi's life was captured by Lawrence Wright, a journalist from the New Yorker who met him in Saudi Arabia more than 15 years ago. In his book, The Looming Tower, Wright quotes Khashoggi about the Brotherhood's appeal. We were hoping to establish an Islamic state anywhere. We believed that the first one would lead to another, and that would have a domino effect, which could reverse the history of mankind. Bin Laden joined the Brotherhood at about the same time Khashoggi did, in the late 1970s. All right, so this would have been the 70s. Says Wright, the two men shared a passion for the Mujahideen's war in Afghanistan, first against the Soviet Union and later for power in Kabul. Khashoggi was covering the war as a journalist, but he was clearly sympathetic to the cause. This argument was, okay, so that's where the photo of him with the RPG. Okay. This argument is really about whether Khashoggi was a member of the Muslim Brotherhood or supporter of its ideals at the time of his death. There is no question he was a member in his youth, and the association persisted for a very long time. Those who claim he was never a member and never espoused Islamist ideals are lying. Their goal is to question the motives of those who insist on the truth, but the real question is why they seem to feel condemning Khashoggi's murder while being honest about his ideology is impossible. There we go. Put on a little morning tea. As to what Khashoggi believed at the time of his death, he left a copious body of work behind expressing his views. He defended the Muslim Brotherhood as a force for democratic reform in the Arab world and criticized U.S. policymakers for their irrational aversion to the organization. The title of his August 28 post was "The U.S. is wrong about the Muslim Brotherhood and the Arab world is suffering for it." All right, so there's more of that at Breitbart.com. That was, and this was from a bit of time ago. John Hayward, November 21st, 2018. All right, so let's just boom there. It's gone. I closed that tab. I closed another tab. Okay, Now, this was something, I think they reposted this. Or no. Actually, it happened to be that I was looking through this website and found this. So the securitystudies.org. Qatar's role in the current Middle East crisis by Brad Patty, April 11, 2018. President Trump just received the Emir of Qatar, Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, praising the Emir's moves on terror financing. The New York Times reports that Qatar invested a lot in making this meeting happen. The friendly visit represented a remarkable turnaround for a president who had once portrayed Qatar as part of the problem, but it reflected the success of an intense and expensive effort by Qatar and its paid lobbyists to change its image in Washington and present it as a partner with the United States in the war on terrorism. Emphasis added, why did Qatar need to change its image? Does the United States have a major military base there? Indeed, Qatar's role in American military operations in the Middle East is quite significant. As SSG reported later, when discussing an earlier phase of the crisis in the Middle East. At that time, SSG noted that the criticism of Qatar for supporting terrorism was a valid move for the administration to make. Qatar has long played both sides against the middle in an attempt to avoid facing either American wrath or the wrath of terror groups. Qatar's ability to serve as a go-between for the United States with the Taliban, for example, shows that Qatar has relationships with both the United States and the Taliban. To a certain degree, go-betweens like that are useful in diplomacy, which is why American support for Qatar's strange position has always been strongest in the State Department. Interesting. I didn't notice that the first time around. A far greater concern to Qatar's regional neighbors and Qatar's drift towards Iran, as the Wall Street Journal reports. The Trump administration scrambling to mend a diplomatic rift between Qatar and its Persian Gulf neighbors has grown increasingly worried that the emirate is drifting into Iran's political and economic orbit, according to U.S. officials. Such a shift, U.S. officials fear, would represent a major political realignment and a potential national security threat as Tehran challenges America and its Middle Eastern allies in the region, heightening the stakes of the Gulf dispute. The shift towards Iran represents serious danger to American foreign policy. As SSG reported last year, we have commitments to Qatar that would be very useful to Iran if Qatar could be turned. Yet, while America's president met with the Emir of Qatar, some of that Emir's top leadership was in Iran to negotiate new economic deals. Qatar's fellow members of the Gulf Cooperation Council greatly object to the Qatar shift toward Iran. Iran has built up the naval and ballistic missile capacity to close what it calls the Persian Gulf, which would cut off the economic lifelines of almost all of the GCC nations. Qatar's efforts to build itself a nest with Iran look like disloyalty to the rest of the GCC, which has responded with a blockade. Indeed, this very week, the Saudi efforts on that blockade appear to have sealed off Qatar's land routes. The UAE's Gulf News states that the move could signify that work on the ambitious project to dig a tourism and commercial waterway alongside the 60-kilometer border between Saudi Arabia and Qatar could start earlier than predicted. Sorry, just looking for something. Put that way, the move sounds like a carrot to encourage the Qataris to better relationships with the Saudis. Give me just 1 second. Got schmutz on here. Got the schmutz on the spectacles. The schmutz. And playing in the background is the Budos band from Budos 2 with the Scorpion. The mighty scorpion, the deadly, powerful scorpion. All right. So, 60-kilometer border between Saudi Arabia and Qatar, waterway along that. It could start earlier than predicted. Put that way, the move sounds like a carrot to encourage the Qataris to better relationships with the Saudis. The Associated Press put it differently. Fancy that, huh? Saudi Arabia is considering a proposal to dig a maritime canal along the kingdom's border with Qatar in a move which is sure to escalate tensions all across the region. See, it's all that escalation. We are peace, don't escalate. We are peace, don't escalate. You know, the idea to turn the peninsula nation into an island and transform its only land border into a military zone and nuclear waste site was revealed in state-linked Saudi newspapers. There's just this part of me that I'm like thinking, like, in the Associated Press, they're like, okay, we want a picture like this. A canal full of drums, leaking green glowing fluid, and barely any water. Just you know, green swampy, like fallout. It should look like fallout. And the Qataris their hands are in the air and they're saying, all we want is peace. Allah, please bring us peace. And then the Saudis are like, no, you'll only get more nuclear waste. You know, that's in my mind. This is what's happening in the editing room. Give me just one moment. Da-da-da-da. All right. All right, with the sound, the glorious sounds of the Budos band, the power of the internet, and now herbal tea. Let's keep going. Oh, all right, and they added emphasis at military zone and nuclear waste site. The proposed nuclear waste site would be on Saudi Arabia's side of the border. So they're not going to just chuck the nuclear waste into Qatar. Oh, well. Why am I even reading this then? I mean, can you imagine just a catapult? You know, like MBS is just standing there, you know, adjusting his cape over and over again as they just keep hurling nuclear waste like across a canal at Qatar, and then like people are running. They're like, "What the fuck?" Okay, Qatar is in a weaker position here than it may realize itself. The Iranians are not the only ones who could close what is also called the Arabian Gulf. Whatever you call it, the Gulf is relatively easy to close, given that its narrowest point, the Strait of Hormuz, is only 29 miles wide. Keeping it open, damn, only 29 miles wide? Okay, keeping it open in the face of mutually hostile powers is the hard part. Closing it is potentially in the power of either Iran or the GCC. The Saudis can also isolate Qatar by land. In addition to that, the Iranian economy, into which Qatar is tying itself, is weakening. Yeah, that's very true. Iran is having, we're really putting the squeeze on them. They're having a hard time right now. If you get street imagery, they are now burning real nasty fuel. They don't have the ability to filter as much stuff, so there's a lot of fucking pollution in major cities. Air pollution. I don't know about water and stuff like that there. There has been a massive flight of capital from Iran in recent weeks. Iran's attempt to impose a lockdown on exchange rates immediately failed as people scrambled to convert Iranian money into dollars. SSG's sources report that Iranian social media is furiously discussing the collapse, and then it has something I believe that's Farsi. Hashtag Farsi stuff. I know one of the letters is definitely, I believe, the letter Nun. So I believe that's IRN for Iran, but I don't know. But it looks like, I believe that's Nun from what I recall of how Christians will put the Nun, um, because I guess that's for Nazarene or something like that, or Nazrani or something. That's what they call Christians or something. The United States has troops on the ground in Qatar, and the bases we use there remain useful. The Trump administration is offering them a way out. But America's regional allies are unlikely to be satisfied if Qatar continues its double game. Ending support for terrorist organizations is only one part of what it will take to satisfy the rest of the GCC. To satisfy America's allies in the region, Qatar is also going to have to stop playing both sides between Iran and the West. So that from the security, no, none of that business, securitystudies.org by Brad Patty, April 11, 2018, Qatar's role in the current Middle East crisis. And once again, music by the Budos Band. Oh, yeah. That's beautiful. Now, to stay in the region, let's look at Iran, shall we? From freebeacon.com. Oh, yeah, baby. Iran had secret plans to build 5 nuclear warheads. New reports stirring Iran hawks on Capitol Hill, Trump administration, by Adam Credo, November 21st, 2018. Yeah, see, I was holding on to a lot of these headlines for too long. Didn't want to just do it live. You know, you gotta just do it. Do it, faggot. Do it. Okay. A new bombshell report based on a secret trove of seized Iranian nuclear documents shows the Islamic Republic had concrete plans to manufacture and build nuclear weapons, and that it was much further along in this scheme than previously known by the international community. Iran's contested Iranian plans, seized by Israel, and publicly disclosed for the first time earlier this year. Information obtained in this raid, Iran's secretive nuclear files has revealed that Tehran was well along the path to building several nuclear warheads by around 2003, including the complex infrastructure needed to produce such weapons. A new report, the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Wow. Let's give me a second to drink to that name. The International Coalition to Protect the Laughter of Children and All Things Wonderful. Okay. And Institute for Science and International Security, a nuclear watchdog group that has exposed in the past the extent of Iran's nuclear works. Now, also, let me make sure I do state something like this. A lot of times, names like this, I have found out by looking into them, are actually a bunch of old, spooky nuclear engineers and stuff like that, and weapons people and stuff like that, who they really did believe what they could get peace. But they were engineers. You know, they're not sitting there going through Ayn Rand's philosophy and bouncing it off a bit of Heidegger and stuff like that. They're developing, you know, the Moab, and that's taking decades. You know, millions of dollars. They're thinking all the time about their woman, their kid, their house in Palo Alto. You know, and they're thinking about all kinds of things. So they can't think Am I actually making a weapon that's really only going to be a part of an arsenal of even more terrifying weapons that'll make the world a much more difficult place to sort out in a short while? And then at some point they kind of realize, oh shit, oh shit, oh man, well, me and these other scientists were at least going to try to keep weapons out of the hands of the most dangerous motherfuckers we can understand are around. And so this is a part of it. And now they're spooky. So that means they might have met some of these people at some point and are like, yeah, I once met a guy from Iran. Yeah, back when we worked on that one thing that, you know, could destroy the moon. Yeah, you know, I just never got a good feeling about that guy. Yeah, so I don't know. So that's, in my mind, that's how the scene writes it. And scene. The report is being viewed as a bombshell revelation on Capitol Hill. Bombshell, and the scene, and the scene as, sorry, I'm not being profesh. And as validating critics of the Obama administration, who allege the former White House has underestimated the extent of Iran's nuclear weapons progress. Now, I am in that school of thought. I believe that, personally, I believe there are a bunch of people who thought if Iran had a certain level of ability, it would balance out Saudi Arabia, it would balance out Israel. That we could play them all off of each other. When I put on my Darth Vader, my fucking Cobra Commander, you know, go full Cobra Commander, this makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense, Destro. We just play them all off of each other. But I don't think this worked right. I don't think it worked. I don't think you could just sort of move. Let me move this here, move this here. Look, world peace. Ha! You know, I don't. You know, we're finding out that people aren't cups and lids. That's my. You know, the boomers have taught us, our generation, Gen Xers, and now, thank God, you millennials are figuring it out, and the Gen Zers. Oh, you can't just sort of move a few pieces around. Whole nations aren't something you can play around with like Risk. They actually have their own autonomy and might decide to do some shit you don't like. So Iran intended to build 5 nuclear warheads. There's a quote. Each with an explosive yield of 10 kilotons and able to be delivered by ballistic missile, the group disclosed in a new report that shows Iran has retained much of its nuclear infrastructure and could continue using it to clandestinely conduct weapons work in violation of the Landmark Nuclear Accord. Landmark! Sorry, I just some language. Just Iran's initial plans show that it had achieved much more than feasibility and scientific studies relating to nuclear weapons, as the IAEA assessed in late 2015, as the Iran nuclear deal was being implemented. According to the group, which based its report on access it was granted to the seized Iranian nuclear documents, which show the regime allocated millions of dollars to the purchase of nuclear materials, including uranium, the key component in a bomb. Iran had put in place, by the end of 2003, the infrastructure for a comprehensive nuclear weapons program. According to the report, the evidence supports that Iran was preparing to conduct an underground test of a nuclear weapon if necessary. The end goal was to have tested deliverable nuclear weapons, and Iran made more progress toward that goal than known before the seizure of the archives. Iran hawks on Capitol Hill say the report confirms the warnings from many that the Obama administration downplayed Iran's nuclear activities. So I'm seeing a good deal of repetition here. Republicans have known that the Obama administration lied to the country about the Iran deal, said one senior Republican congressional official. So a guy said, just a few months ago, PSI published documents showing they lied to Congress about enforcing sanctions. Okay, so I just wanted to get that out there, mostly only for this reason. So now this means somebody is trying to say that Iran was at the stage of underground testing, that they could have done underground testing. That now, why this is this important? There is a theory that I've heard from one person in particular, but it's sort of been echoed that it could be done. But another person said something I'm like, okay, these tie together. These are starting to dovetail. That North Korea was a bomb testing facility. They would test your weapon, or if they were going to sell you one, or sell you the part slowly, or like they would work in tandem with your country, but they could test it in their underground facilities. So that is what I'm wondering about here, because people have said that North Korea actually was sort of a playground for various kind of the rather villainous people of the world. That there would be like an island that would just have that a general owned fundamentally, and you could just stay at his palace on this island, off the coast of North Korea. Like someone had taken a photo of one of these. It was a hell of a spread, and but I mean, you could just hang out on the island. Yeah, it's cool. Only nice Korean. You would just see a handful of nice Korean people who would bring you stuff. I figure this idea wasn't too crazy, and then when somebody was like, why wouldn't you just offer your testing facilities? He's like, that could, that would make some sense if the accusation is that a country like Iran would have to deal with a country like North Korea to get certain materials without people knowing. So it was just a theory, but I was like, okay, I kind of dig this idea, because it doesn't sound that impossible, because America will, like, just how America and Britain exchanges intelligence information, will store each other's intelligence information. So if you're an American, you want to know something about who's tracking you, well, you can't. You're suing you're suing in the wrong place. You have to sue for this information in Britain. So, Daily Caller. Whoa, damn you. Okay, and actually, I'm going to put some more water on for my tea here. Delicious herbal tea, Mountain Rose Herbs. Secret youth formula so I can keep my hair dark. All right, there we go. All right, water activated. All right. No, Daily Caller. No. God damn it. Wait, come on. What the hell's going on here? What the fuck is going on here? Okay. All right. That was super weird. Okay, that was actually now. So what that story was is it was a Daily Caller story about Antifa harassing a Asian girl at UC Berkeley or something like that, because she didn't there was something about gender that she was in opposition to, and she's like, well, I'm a Christian and I don't define there's only two genders. And they're going, and I've got to see if that story will pop up, because that was, it was like, oh, there we go. Okay, yeah. All right. Opinion. Berkeley Antifa targets Isabella Chow for defending biological sex. November 21st, 2018. Berkeley Antifa has targeted a new enemy, a soft-spoken Asian member of the student government named Isabella Chow, the daughter of Malaysian-Cambodian immigrants who campaigned on a platform of representing Cal's Christian community. What was Chow's crime? She abstained from a student resolution condemning the Trump administration's proposal to restore the original intent of the word sex in Title IX to mean biological sex. Let me repeat that. What was Senator Chow's crime? She abstained from a student resolution condemning the Trump administration's proposal to restore the original intent of the word sex in Title IX to mean biological sex. Holy shit. The Obama administration had unilaterally defined sex to include sexual orientation and gender identity. Actually, it's called sexual preference, not orientation. Orientation has to do with a compass, such as Orient, East, Occident, West. It isn't like, oh, I'm kind of North sex. I'm North by Northwest sexy, you know. Outraged by this affirmation of scientific fact, the Student Senate introduced a resolution urging the university to increase its support for transgender, binary, and gender non-conforming students. I guess that's chicks who wear jeans. The resolution was supported by all the senators except one, Isabella Chow. I don't know, are dudes with ponytails? I don't know. They're just not conforming. This chick is wearing a fedora. What the hell? No, she did not attack or criticize anyone. She simply abstained. In a statement, she spoke out against bullying and discrimination. It is never, ever okay, she offered love and compassion, writing, "My God is one who assigns immeasurable value and desires to love each and every human being in God's eyes, and therefore my own. Every one of you here today and in the LGBTQ plus community as a whole is significant, valid, wanted, and loved, even if when our views differ." Boom. That's why it's God's job to make judgment. That said, Chow went on, "I believe that God created male and female at the beginning of time and has designed sex for marriage between one man and one woman." Boom. Fundamental Christian belief, fundamental Jewish belief, fundamental Islamic belief, fundamental Buddhist belief, fundamental Confucian belief, and for all, there's pretty much, I have never heard of a school of Taoist thought that would disagree with that. Thus, I cannot vote for this bill without compromising my values and my responsibility to the community that elected me to represent them. Backlash was immediate and virulent. Chow was lambasted for bigotry and hate. She said, "Why you hate me?" Her campus political party repudiated her. How could you? You are conservative. How can you say such normal, sober-minded things? The commies will pillory us. A petition was circulated demanding that she resign from student government or face a recall. A school senate meeting packed with hundreds of students harangued her for 3 hours. The student newspaper denounced her and then refused to allow her to publish a response. Teddy Lake, the student who introduced the resolution for the Queer Alliance and Resource Center, declared himself offended that Chow would actually ask the Senate to respect her beliefs as she does ours. His contemptuous reply was, "What Senator Chow expressed tonight were not beliefs at all. They were hateful prejudices that deserve nothing less than the strongest condemnation." So fundamental religious beliefs of almost every major religion in the world are to be repudiated, and these people are to be dealt with by the mob. That is what they're teaching in school. That is what the gay community, the LGBTQA plus, all of them, that is what they're really about. And so everybody needs to understand this. When they finally start to really burn the churches, when the Asians need to start getting this. These people are not on your side. I just, oh my God. Now I get it so much. There's so many of the kids I grew up with that there was all this stuff. They were just like, oh, why do people do stuff like that? You know, and I'm like, man, these Asian kids, they don't know how to have fun. And now I get it. Now I get it. It's just because all those kids I grew up with, they are all quite successful. And you know, they achieved a lot of their goals in life. And so now I respect their ways of keeping their kids, building a fence around their children. Like a lot of those kids were very naive about the world. But they just didn't grow up fast. Then there were all the kids who grew up fast, and those kids ended up pretty much staying back in the city. And yeah. The was it Stefan Molyneux put it as how is it, the repression or something like that of sexual maturation, that if you have a society that makes sure sexual maturation is held back to a critical point of the late teens, then you get great long-term results out of the youth. And that this becomes more and more and more, I've noticed it, is the most common among societies that have had writing the longest and have the longest amount of intact traditions from the time of their ancient written days. The less they had intact writing, the more they were just sort of milling about some wilderness with nothing but thatch and spears, the less likely they were to hold back sexual maturation of their young. That their kids are all pregnant as quick as possible. You know, they're all diddling each other as soon as they could figure it out, and nobody cares. And that a lot of the Western world looks at that and says, oh, but look, these people who have nothing but thatch and spears understand sexuality much more than we do, you know. And that was their argument, was that the West does not understand sexuality because we don't let our kids diddle and fiddle with each other. You know, and really, this is, I know Dr. Dean Adele was one of these people out of San Francisco. It was a major argument of his. He was right about a lot of things, but this one, he had the wrong approach. And he loved all things Chinese, but he could not figure this out. They hold their kids back from the sexual marketplace until after high school and still try to hold them close. Chinese mom. Everybody who understands Chinese mom, all you got to say is my Chinese mom or my Korean mom. They will know they'll know if you're a hoe. And and some of them probably kind of let go at a certain point, let you do your thing. But they don't like hoes. You know, Asian people don't like hoes. So they don't respect hoes. And so it's just I've just kind of thought about this, like in thinking back to the Asian Christians I grew up with, and some of these kind of people, these boat people who were helped out by the Christian community. They were hidden. They were supported by the Christian community. Now when they stand up for they stand up for their way of life, the only thing they understand, that what was their world is gone. It was destroyed by the communists. Their relatives are lining a fucking field. And then they go to school and they just are like, well, I just abstained from saying anything because of my beliefs. And then some fucking weirdo is like, how can you have such beliefs? I can't believe this. We should hit her with a rock. No, he didn't say that. But, not yet. On Twitter, Antifa denounced what it called Chow's horribly homophobic and transphobic ideas and her disgusting position. See the commie patrol, you know, the butt patrol, the animus against Chow is so fierce that the university counseled her piano recital. Oh, yeah, that's another thing. See, that's a great way of keeping your daughter from hoeing about, is make her good at, what was it? One of the ones that was real common, was it, I think it was Diana Chow, I want to think her name was a marksman. She was an NRA markswoman. And I always was like, wait, you shoot guns? Because she's a tiny little thing. And then what was it? And then piano players. That was another one that you saw a lot in San Francisco, was they would take them to, they all play, a lot of them played piano. Were quite good. And you would have no idea. It was just Chinese kids were always kept busy. They all were dressed up like their moms back in the day. It was really kind of fucked up. But it was like they all had like the white high tops and like their moms like clothes that look like their mom's clothes. She told me that friends walk with her around campus for safety, especially since Antifa joined the attack, a group with a documented penchant for fascist-style violence. Yes, they will beat up a woman. They have no problem beating up chicks, old people, kids, and fucking chicks. That's how they roll. Because they're the real niggers of politics. They ain't fake niggers. They're real niggers of politics. Antifa. Penchant for fascist-style violence using tactics pioneered by the actual fascist stormtroopers of Weimar Germany. Why is it deemed acceptable to attack Chow's statement as homophobic, disgusting, hateful, and prejudiced, when even the San Francisco Chronicle described it as politely worded? Today, it's not enough to be polite and civil. You must affirm and submit, or be vilified as an enemy of the people. Sociologist Bradley Campbell, co-authored of The Rise of Victimhood Culture, explains that campuses have succumbed to a movement that divides people into victims versus oppressors because Christians have historically been a dominant force in Western society. They are labeled oppressors, even when they are a minority, as they are on the Berkeley campus. As a result, they are cast as villains, no matter if they demonstrate love and compassion. By contrast, victims are, by definition, virtuous, must be handled with kid gloves, lest they be offended. As Campbell explains, one of the shibboleths of victimhood culture is that it's okay to be offended, to offend the oppressors, but not the oppressed. It's perfectly acceptable. Yes, the term they use is, you are not allowed to punch down, or, oh, you are punching down. Which, that whole, just everything about that, I'm like, down. Not punching in, not noted. Unter, punching the unter. Got it. The Uber in the unter. It's perfectly acceptable to show wrath toward oppressors. Victimhood culture is genuinely new. No other known society has claimed moral authority on the basis of victim status. Where did it come from? Its roots are in cultural Marxism, the imposition of Marxist categories on all of culture. Ah, this is why. Yeah. In classical Marxism, the driving force in history is economic, the struggle between capitalists, oppressors, and the proletariat, oppressed. Cultural Marxism foists the same martyr mentality on race, sex, ethnicity, sexuality, gender. The list keeps growing. True believers are urged to develop class consciousness, become aware of yourself as a suffering victim, then rise up against oppressors. Marxism has been called a Christian heresy because of its religious overtones. Its counterpart to the Garden of Eden is the state of primitive communism. Its version of the fall into sin, the source of evil and oppression, is the creation of private property. And that's literally like the key thing that's interesting, because I often on here, those of you who've tuned in before, you know that I will quote from Robert Briefolt's The Mothers. Somebody on here told me Briefolt is a was a avowed Marxist or something like that. So to some degree, you can even see some of this view of the world and the human creature and how human civilization evolved. The Marxist view, primitive communism, to then the great fall of private property. You could see this mapped out. He, though, makes no argument that this is there's some moral thing to this. He just notes that at one time, before you can measure territory and control territory by actually defending it, and yielding crops from that territory, you had mostly these tribes that were run by a motherhood. As economics became, or trade became more complex, and you had proxies for goods, like a currency, that's when you start to see the motherhood retract its power and become a thing of custom, like the matchmaker. In almost all societies, the women were matchmakers, and that up until my living memory, I could still remember this being done, and women do this to this day. I mean, I can remember it being a thing, like television shows and radio shows, and this was especially I think there's even a word for this in Jewish culture, and that so it was one of those things. I was like, okay. The men end up becoming the bulwark that you see in a complex society. The women are running everything from inside the institutions, such as various religious and civil societies and households, which are, in a complex society, the fundamental basis of why the economics exist. And the Redeemer is the proletariat who will rise up against the capitalist oppressors and usher in a Marxist paradise, classless society. Historian Robert Wesson writes, "The savior proletariat will, by its suffering, redeem mankind and bring the kingdom of heaven on earth." Were it not a parody of Christianity, victimhood culture would never have gotten off the ground. All of the world's major religions, only Christianity, attest to a God who suffers on behalf of people, who becomes a victim of violence as a means of redemption. The Christian ethic has always called for compassion for the oppressed, the marginalized, the outcast. By misappropriating these classical Christian themes for their own political agenda, ironically, today's victims are now creating new forms of oppression. Senator Chao told me that longtime friends have turned against her, and Antifa's involvement raises the threat level. Yet she refuses to resign, saying, "If I do, there will be no one else to represent the voices that are ignored and misunderstood on the campus." Those outside what she calls the Berkeley bubble now have a responsibility to support her in challenging its victim-villain culture. Activists like Antifa, who claim victimhood status, are rapidly revealing themselves to be the new oppressors. Nancy Pearcey is a professor and scholar in residence at Houston Baptist University and editor-at-large of the Pearcey Report. All right, so that was another article that I had open. I wanted to make sure to get onto YouTube. Then a little... this one just sounded like it was going to be funny, and kind of on the lighter side. Let's see here. What the hell? Generators, Coors, and canned food. How these mountain boys are surviving in paradise, by Ryan Lillis. Sacramento Bee. November 24th, and updated on the 25th. Paradise. Brad Weldon has lived in paradise his entire life. Wasn't about to leave his home or his blind 90-year-old mother behind when the campfire hit. And he's not going to leave now that the fire is gone. though not much is left of the town he remembers. When the flames came up to his neighborhood in the central part of Paradise, Weldon grabbed a garden hose and beat back the blaze. When the hose line cut out, he started throwing buckets of water, 5 gallons at a time. His house was spared, but everything around him was wiped out. 2 weeks later, Weldon is still at his house, one of a small group of claimed mountain boys who have defied evacuation orders and are surviving on meat stored in their generator-powered freezers, bagged lunches dropped off by PG&E crews, and supplies provided by a mysterious band of volunteers that Weldon calls the Redneck Underground. See, this is why Northern California is its own place. Under the first clear sky in more than a week, Weldon was busy Tuesday constructing a small structure to shelter his generator before rain arrived in Paradise this week. His mom, Norma, rested inside the house. He said he has no plans on going anywhere and he will only leave once he's convinced he will be able to get back. I'm a mountain boy. I've got everything I need, he said. I understand the police are worried, but I've been here my whole life. The Camp Fire displaced thousands of residents in Northern California's Butte County, destroyed more than 13,000 homes, and killed at least 85 people. It is the deadliest and most destructive wildfire in state history, leaving nearly the entire towns of Paradise, Magalia, and other foothill communities in ruins. Weldon estimated that fewer than a dozen residents have refused to leave and remain in their homes, not daring to venture out in fear that the authorities will order them off the ridge. Butte County Sheriff Corey Honea has said his deputies won't arrest people who are legitimately in town, but as long as evacuation orders are in place, authorities won't let anyone back inside the town if they cross official police checkpoints to go out. I can't see myself sitting in a shelter day after day with sick people and screaming kids all around me, said Lyndon McAfee, another of those toughing it out behind the lines. It's fucking ridiculous. Fucking ridiculous. Just let fucking people do what they want. Much law enforcement. So many asshole. I know. It's just, those are the rules they got to go by. Everybody's, a bunch of people are following the rules. A bunch of people are pissing on our shoes and telling us it's raining. And I can't, and everybody is standing in piss. Everybody's standing in piss, trying to see how long it will take the referee to deal with this. All right. McAfee sought shelter for days in the twisted metal remains of a shed in a canyon just outside Paradise, cooking a chicken he killed to survive, before walking to Weldon's home. This is my home, Paradise, man, he said. I love this place. Stuart Nugent lives less than a mile from Weldon. His wife evacuated when the fire tore onto their dead-end street, but Nugent stayed to fight the blaze. The lid of the propane tank fell from the sky onto his lawn. Of a propane tank. Wow. Ammunition stored nearby homes kept exploding. 6 hours into his vigil, the wooden fence leading up to his home burned, and his neighbor's home was destroyed. Nugent decided he stayed too long, but it was too late to get out. I got carried away, he said. A sheriff's deputy eventually picked him up and drove him to a shelter in Chico, but he quickly changed his mind about leaving. I woke up and said to myself, what the hell am I doing here, he said. His wife picked him up and drove him back to a back road. Nugent snuck back into Paradise on foot, covering more than 8 miles of rocky and steep terrain to get to his house. He's been surviving on canned food. A friend of a neighbor dropped off a case of Coors Light beer, and utility workers have provided him pizza and lunches. Despite his isolation, Nugent has kept his sense of humor. If my cat starts talking to me, he said, I'll leave. The only company Weldon and McAfee have arrived Saturday afternoon when more than 24 heavily armed police officers suddenly surrounded the home. Of fucking course. Of course. Armed to the teeth. Just in case. This is America. This is America. Oh, there's thousands of people just trying to storm the fucking border. That's okay. These guys need the fucking patrol after them. 24 armed police suddenly surrounded the home. A few hundred feet away, President Donald Trump was, assessing the damage of the skyway. Okay, all right, thank you. All right. See, this is why I have to calm myself often. Because I'll read a line and I'll be like, you are fucking kidding me. This is not about to go there. And then sure enough, but it didn't. So that's all right. All right. Things are okay. Maybe things are okay. We like Trump, McAfee said, but we were pretty pissed he didn't come over to see us. I'm thinking that he was like, how long have they been in there? Do they shower? I'm not shaking their hands. They don't shower, do they? They don't have a shower. I'm not going to shake their hands. All right, hold on a second. All right. Weldon said he has plenty of food to stay as long as he wants. The underground volunteer group brought him 25 pounds of tri-tip steak. Fuck yeah. Boom. 10 pounds of chicken, rice, beans, and vegetables. Bam. I'm not a survivalist, Weldon said Tuesday. I'm a survivor. Nice. Nice. Oh, that it just so happens some of this area, such as Paradise, might be on the high-speed rail line that will never get built. Excellent. Thank you very much. Now, this one is one I brought up a couple times over the last few days where I talked about the inverted pyramid. So I just wanted to make sure that I cited one of the things I'd read recently about this. In aging America, old people will outnumber children for the first time in the country's history. From the Daily Mail, 25th of November, 2018. There's a little graph there. By 2030, all baby boomers will be older than 65, U.S. Census Bureau reveals. Okay, baby boom, 1945 through 1965. Gen X, 60, basically 66 or 65 to 85. Millennials, 85 to then 2000 or 2005, something like that. Something along those lines. Okay. And so you'll get people who are on the cusp of one of those and you could see it. You could see it in what they know about and what their interests are and stuff. By 2030, all baby boomers will be older than 65, U.S. Census Bureau reveals. 1 in every 5 Americans will be retirement age, and deaths will rise substantially. Yes, expect for one of the strangest fucking things is that there will be a problem with all of the dead bodies. That's really something. Disposal of bodies is really ornate in our country. And there's like in say the city of Eugene, there's one funeral home. It's like 200,000 people here. They just have a racket. And so people will have to go out of the city to go to another funeral home if that main funeral home and they do all the services, because most of these services, becomes it's an industry. And so you can only go to one shop in town. So this is really going to be a problem once you start getting like lots of people dying every day of old age, because like you got to dispose of them. And then a body can't just die in a room and they're like, oh, well, that's cool. No, like it starts oozing all kinds of stuff out of it. Like it's just, you got to dispose of everything that it's touched. And like, it just all, like people who deal like with in the medical industry, like, like humans are dirty. And, I used to work in gyms. Humans are dirty, and when we die, we get like way dirtier, way fast, and everything that disposes of us naturally starts showing up. And so people are it's gonna be real weird when like you see like houses that like nobody can buy because the price that like somebody would have died in it, their body would have rotten quite a bit. Then at some point it's going to be, oh, well, because they were rotting in this house, then the house had to get cleaned up by hazmat, and it cost the estate a fortune. It's like stuff like that is going to be like, I've been thinking a lot of this through. Like this is going to be like real weird when this happens and this hits. The non-Hispanic white alone population is projected to shrink to 179 million. Bureau did not reveal when white Americans will fall below half of the population. Adults 65 and older will soon outnumber children. For the first time in America's history, it has been revealed. The U.S. Census Bureau, come on, Daily Caller, what are you doing? Why do that? Released new projections this year that showed the country's changing and aging demographics. By 2030, all baby boomers will be older than the age 65, and 1 in every 5 Americans will be retirement age. The Census Bureau said that deaths will rise substantially between 2020 and 2050, meaning the country's population will naturally grow very slowly. It shows a graph. Projections also revealed that America will become more racially and ethnically diverse, with the country's share of mixed-race children set to double. The non-Hispanic, white alone population is projected to shrink from 199 million in 2020 to 179 million in 2060, meaning the 2 or more races population will be the fastest growing over the next several decades. While the projections did not touch on race, this time the Census Bureau did not mention when white Americans will fall below half the population. It was just us getting back to sticking to data, a Bureau spokesman said, told the New York Times. The Census Bureau made headlines in 2008 when it projected that non-Hispanic whites would drop below half the population by 2042. And 3 years ago, the Bureau released a new graphic that showed white Americans would lost their majority status by 2044. Many academics criticized how the Bureau was presenting its data, fearing it would stoke white nationalism. Former Census Bureau Director Kenneth Pruitt was so concerned by the graphic that he organized a meeting with the chief U.S. statistician. Statistics are powerful, Pruitt said. They're a description of who we were as a country. If you say a majority-minority, that becomes a huge fact in the national discourse. A 2014 study also found that white Americans who were assigned to read about the changing demographic were more likely to report negative feelings toward racial minorities. And then said another, oh, okay, it was the graph in question about racial demographics. They were also more likely restrictive immigration policies and more likely to believe that white people would lose status and face discrimination in the racial shift. A number of researchers don't even agree with the Bureau's projections. Bingo, because you never know. White people might get horny. The redheads might get even foxier. Foxy redheads might get even foxier. So you never know. You never know. The hot blondes get even hotter for Chadley Chatterson. All right. New York sociologist Richard Alba said the Bureau classifies someone as a minority, boom, even if they have both white and minority ancestry and may identify as white or partly white. That's actually very important because that happens within various Latino populations and in populations that are heavily mestizo, such as, like, say, part Native American or Native American, quote unquote, and like Norteño Latino. So they're technically Latino. They've been in America for, I mean, like, this would be, I mean, like, there's a lot of people like this. You see this in Texas. Their name is Gallegos, not Gallegos. And they speak no Spanish unless they learned it. Nobody in their family speaks Spanish anymore. They might even have relics that go back to days before California was a state, that kind of thing. People like that will intermarry with, like, a person who's white and Pomo in California. When people see their kid, they don't know if they're seeing an Italian. They don't know if they're just seeing a brunette. They you know, if for a minute they might think they're seeing somebody who's Latin, but they're not sure. And I grew up with a lot of people like that, like Native Americans with red, like fire red hair. But when you technically looked at their face, you were like, wait a second. You're a Native American somehow bleached and with fire red hair. How'd that happen? Well, they were just that mixed. And they go to the res. They have cousin. They stand next to their cousin. Their cousin is dark as hell, you know. And it's like it was really funny. Like, I was like, that is such a fucking trip. But that was the way I, you know, that's the world I come from. So I kind of get where that guy was coming from. That there's people who they wouldn't understand themselves as an ethnic minority after so much time. Now, this one I particularly liked because I love seeing the news expose my enemies and hear the lamentations of the bitches on Twitter. From Neon Nettle. Clintons worked with British government to spy on Trump, insider reveals. George Papadopoulos drops list of those behind illegal Spygate campaign. This was it November 24th? No, thank you. I do not want you to send me updates. A former Trump campaign official has blown the whistle on Spygate and dropped a list of names of those behind the illegal spying on then presidential candidate Donald Trump. Let's have a little musical accompaniment again. How about that? Oh, yeah. Maybe not. Yeah. Maybe get the music. Yeah. Robotron, are you gonna help me out here? Yeah. Drop the volume just a little. There we go. All right. Once again, Budo's man. George Papadopoulos, a former member of the Foreign Policy Advisory Panel to Trump's 2016 campaign, has revealed that the British government and its central intelligence, the British government and its central intelligence, the Clintons, Australian government officials, and the FBI all conspired to unlawfully spy on Trump and stir up allegations of Russian collusion. Tastes like winning. All right. Papadopoulos published the list in a tweet that includes the names of Clinton operatives. By the way, definitely follow Papadopoulos. Papadopoulos is loving. He is this nigga strutting on Twitter. Like, what? Fuck you, nigga. Published a list in a tweet that includes the names of Clinton. Now, also, I want to make sure I put it out there. The guy's a spook. I forget. George Webb has exposed what Papadopoulos apparently does. I forget exactly what kind of spook he is. But they fucked up. They fucked up trying to play him, and he, I don't know how he did this. One day he's probably going to be the one who will write a book. I'm betting he's the one who will write the book. Okay. It's not really a secret who the British sources were that were illicitly spying on Trump and me and others. They are fighting to keep this private. I will lay them out here. 1. Tobias Ellwood. 2. Stephen Halper. 3. Alexander Downer. 4. British Embassy in D.C. 5. GCHQ. 6. Erica T. That was a tweet from the 22nd. Releases. Every once in a while, the name does tickle me. Australia's mainstream media quickly pounced. My inner 10-year-old pounced on the expose, attempting to discredit the former Trump campaign volunteer. Well, let's see. The Australian MSM moved to accuse Mr. Papadopoulos, in motion, of promoting disinformation aimed at Australia. Disinformatia aimed at Australia. Yes, comrade, you are disinforming our people about your involvement with Trump. Morning Herald describes as a public relations war against Australia's former High Commissioner to the UK, Alexander Downer. What the Aussie News is failing to report is that President Trump ordered FISA's texts and FD302s to be declassified on September 17th. Since then, the Australian and British governments have been begging him not to make the memos public. Oh, I wonder if it'll expose all sorts of fag-tardedness. These memos will likely expose the role of both governments and the Clintons in the Obama administration's illegal spying operation on Trump and his team. Papadopoulos dropped a number of names on his list. While some may seem obvious, there are individuals involved that may slip under the radar without further investigation of their ties. Let's break down the list and examine who these sources are and why they are fighting to keep this private. 1. Tobias Ellwood is a British politician and author who currently serves the Member of Parliament, MP, for Bournemouth East and as a UK government minister of the Ministry of Defence. Papadopoulos reportedly met with Ellwood, then a senior minister in the Foreign Office, at the UN General Assembly in September 2016. Ellwood's meeting occurred after Papadopoulos had discovered in April that the Russians had dirt on Hillary Clinton in the form of thousands of emails, quote unquote, but before WikiLeaks started publishing her emails in October. Ellwood met with Papadopoulos twice in September 2016 at the UN General Assembly and in London. At the time, Obama's ambassador to the UN was Samantha Power. Power's position had no apparent intelligence-related function, yet she had made hundreds of unmasking requests during the final year of the Obama administration. Link posted. According to the BBC, link, Ellwood is also tied to Joseph Mifsud, Professor Mifsud of the London Academy of Diplomacy. Serious. Yes, at this institution, what we teach our members of Middle Eastern descent who live in London is diplomacy. Sometimes this diplomacy requires polonium or a 25 at close range. Okay. Sometimes such diplomacy requires somebody being dumped in a pit. All right. Professor Mifsud of the London Academy of Diplomacy, originally from Malta. You see, it doesn't. There is nothing shady whatsoever. What, like, I mean, everybody knows about. I mean, like, we've all been to Malta. You know, that last time we were in Malta, we're all like, man, I wish I was Maltese. I mean, it's just so like, people from all over the world are here just doing super normal things. Mixed with Britain's foreign secretary and ex-CIA people, and was key to connecting Team Trump with the Russians. And now remember, Russia's what's weird. Always remember this. There is nothing weirder. See, remember that Maltesian dish that we've all had? Yeah. Remember the Iranian dish that we've all had? Oh, but a pierogi, that's fucking weird. No. That those people are foreign and strange, and you got to watch out for them. All right, sorry. Sorry. There's this wheel spinning right now. I see Water Penny, you're here. I'm always thinking through, why is it everything I hear about Malta is always shady? Always, it's everything. I never hear about anything it's not kind of mysterious or shady, or they're the giant Maltesian dog or something. The elite killing team of Maltesian security agents. Okay. Cambridge University, Stephen Halper. Cambridge University professor Stephen Halper first contacted Trump advisors Carter Page, George Papadopoulos, and Sam Clovis during the 2016 campaign. Halper was a top-secret CIA and FBI source who was implanted to spy on the Trump campaign advisors. I want to make sure this CIA and FBI thing, this keeps popping up too. Everybody involved in this Spygate thing all seem to have jobs at both places. So now a big part of what I think the right needs to deal with the Republican Party is, so what is the CIA then? If the CIA is not supposed to be involved in domestic operations, then what the fuck are they do? What do they do? What is going on here? Because now we have just too many of these people involved in some bullshit coup against the duly elected president, with apparently the help of various rogue elements in the FBI. Oh, and can I get a witness? Fuck George H.W. Bush. Let him fucking rot. He's gonna be hanging out with all of his friends in the lowest chamber of whatever occult mystical prison they'll be trapped in for all the demonic rites they were involved in and shit. Halper, after the Daily Caller exposed Halper's role in May 2018, President Donald Trump asserted he was implanted on the campaign for political purposes. Reports are there was indeed at least one FBI representative implanted for political purposes into my campaign for president, Trump tweeted. It took place very early on, and long before the phony Russia hoax became a hot fake news story. If true, all-time biggest political scandal. All-time. Huge political scandal. The biggest, frankly, biggest political scandal. Huge. Halper, 73, is an academic and veteran of 3 Republican administrations. He worked at Cambridge University until 2015. Alexander Downer, possibly one of the lesser-known figures in U.S. circles, the Australian High Commissioner in London, Alexander Downer, is instrumental in tying together the entire scandal. So, why was Downer involved at all? On the surface, he may appear to be a most unlikely source of information on which the FBI could act. It's only when you dig a little deeper into Downer's history and connections that his role becomes clearly significant. It is no secret that associates of the Clintons sought to undermine Donald Trump's presidential campaign by arranging a meeting link with Russian agents on the pretext that they held information they had gathered on Hillary Clinton. Deep State Downer link has very close connections with Bill and Hillary Clinton from his days as Australia's Minister of Foreign Affairs. During this time, what the fuck? What the fuck? Just desperately loading ads. Okay, come on. There. During this time, Downer persuaded the Commonwealth to pay that's weird, as Australian 25 million Australian dollars. I did not know that's how that was written. Into the Clinton Foundation, ostensibly to fight AIDS in Southeast Asia. Downer meant ostensibly, because that's what the Clinton Foundation was put together to do, right? Has nothing to do with some library in Arkansas. Has nothing to do with Haiti. No. See, it has nothing to do with solving AIDS in Africa. No, you see, it's solving AIDS everywhere. Somehow, Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton are solving that AIDS problem all over the world, no matter where, no matter when, with the power of Stephen Downer. Deep State Downer. Helping the AIDS. Downer met with George Papadopoulos in London, and as a result of that meeting, information was passed to the FBI, which caused that organization to commence an investigation of possible collusion between the Russian government and the Trump campaign. A Wall Street Journal report dated June 2nd, 2018, revealed that it was Downer who passed information about Papadopoulos to the FBI. This report was later confirmed by the Australian Financial Review. Noted. On June 7, 2018, that cited a Fox interview with chairman of the U.S. House Intelligence Committee, Devin Nunes, who said, Mr. Downer tipped off the U.S. Embassy in London, and by extension, President Barack Obama's State Department, of which Mrs. Clinton was previously in charge. We are not supposed to spy on each other's citizens, and it's worked well, and it continues to work well. And we know it's working well because there was no intelligence that passed through the Five Eyes channels to our government. And that seemed to be confirmed on June 21st, 2018, when it was reported that super spy Alexander Downer passed Papadopoulos' information to the deputy head of mission, Elizabeth Dibble, at the U.S. London Embassy. Link. Anyone with the most passing of interest in Mueller's special investigation of Russian interference in 2016 presidential campaign would have developed a reasonable suspicion that it was manufactured by the Clinton campaign to destroy the Trump campaign, ably abetted by the DOJ and FBI, who were conspiring to remove a duly elected president in the event Trump won. Perhaps one of the biggest surprises on the list is the British Embassy in Washington, D.C. That one did surprise me. Didn't. The previous names on the list already reveal a connection to Britain. But if the British government has agents on the ground in D.C. actively working to undermine Trump's campaign, then it would expose a far deeper global conspiracy against the presidency. British MI6 chiefs have been pleading with Trump not to declassify FISA memos related to the Russia probe, citing genuine concern about sources being exposed if classified parts of the wiretap requests are made public. It boils down to the exposure of people, said one U.S. intelligence official, adding, "We don't want to reveal sources and methods." Staff at the British Embassy in Washington, D.C. have now been barred from discussing the matter with journalists. GCHQ, according to White House journalist Michael Wolff, former British Prime Minister Tony Blair told President Donald Trump shortly after his inauguration that British intelligence services, GCHQ, may have spied on him. Wolf alleges that Blair wanted to help with the Middle East initiatives of Jared Kushner. Oh, I bet he wanted to. Trump's son-in-law and senior aide to the new president, and shared a juicy rumor he had heard. In February, Blair visited Kushner in the White House. On this trip, the new freelance diplomat, perhaps seeking to prove his usefulness to this new White House, mentioned a juicy rumor, the possibility that the British had had the Trump campaign staff under surveillance, monitoring its telephone calls and other communications, and possibly even Trump himself, Wolf wrote. The implication is that although the Obama administration would not have asked the British to spy on the Trump campaign, it may have been hinted at that it would be helpful if it did. A month after the purported meeting, in March 2017, Trump sent a tweet alleging that Obama had wiretapped Trump Tower during the 2016 presidential election, and claim denied by a spokesperson for Obama. Trump's tweet cited comments from Fox News commentator Andrew Napolitano, who alleged that Obama had visited UK intelligence agency GCHQ to help surveil Trump and his associates. Fascinating. I did not know about that. GCHQ denied the allegations, saying in a statement, recent allegations made by media commentator Judge Andrew Napolitano about GCHQ being asked to conduct wiretapping against the then president-elect are nonsense. They are utterly ridiculous and should be ignored. Person number 6, Erica T. brings us back again to Clinton-tied Australian Foreign Minister Alexander Downer. Erica Thompson is a career diplomat working as a political counselor at the Commission. According to ABC News, Thompson had a boyfriend called Christian Cantor, who was the head of the political branch in the Israeli embassy. I was actually kind of wondering if he was Jewish. Papadopoulos also knew Cantor, described himself as someone who just hated Trump. He hated his guts. Australian sources describe Cantor, who is now engaged to Thompson, as a liberal internationalist who'd be no Trump fan. Australian sources emphatically deny Thompson as an ASIS agent, but a mainstream DFAT officer. She asked Downer if he'd like to meet Papadopoulos, explaining he was known to Cantor and was part of the Donald Trump campaign. All of a sudden, Cantor decides one day to introduce me to his so-called girlfriend, who just happened to be an Australian intelligence officer and the assistant to Alexander Downer, Papadopoulos said. Downer thought it was a bad idea. Thought it wasn't a bad idea. Trump wasn't yet the Republican nominee for the United States presidency, but close to being, and there were things to be learned about the potential president. Downer knew a fair bit about oil and gas in the Eastern Mediterranean. Ah, okay, so he's one of those people. Having been United Nations Special Advisor on Cyprus, got it, for 6 years from 2008, a period, got it. I'm betting he's a part of the team that made sure the Cyprus banks fell apart, so that the funding for the development of the South Stream was slowed down, and there was a ton of supposedly Russian state bad guy judo dojo Putin judo dojo people, all his friends, all their money was supposedly in those banks. This is interesting now because I know somebody had mentioned something, and it caused me to look into the Aphrodite oil field and a variety of other oil fields that are in the Eastern Mediterranean, that their boundaries are being contested by the various countries. So it's handy that Turkey now is balls deep in Greece, because what's Greece going to do about its claims to oil fields when it's constantly fighting off 10 million Saracen, poor Saracens. A period when Perth-based firm Woodside acquired a 30% stake off the coast of Israel. Boom, there we go, which shares a maritime border with the island of Cyprus. How is Cyprus going to possibly outclaim Israel? Australian oil company Woodside was actively competing with American oil companies trying to do business in Israel and Cyprus. Okay. Papadopoulos later tweeted, "I was advising American companies at the time. No wonder Downer wanted to talk oil in London and then began recording me with his phone. Setup." The Australian side denies recording the conversation, but the intel was relayed back to Australia in a cable written by Thompson. According to the cable, Papadopoulos had made comments about Russia that proved critical. Thompson reported that Downer had asked Papadopoulos about Trump's prospects. Let's just turn that off. It's plenty warm in here. There we go. Let's get let's like shed a little light on the issue. Shed a little light here. Thompson reported that Downer had asked Papadopoulos about Trump's prospects should he get to a general election, and the American was optimistic about his chances, but then he would be, wouldn't he? Papadopoulos reportedly said the Russians might use some damaging material they had on Hillary Clinton, who was still some weeks from becoming the presumptive Democrat presidential nominee. It was a remarkable tidbit of information to casually drop into conversation. "I have no recollection whatsoever talking about emails," Papadopoulos later stated, referring to a trove of Clinton and Democrat-related emails that had been allegedly stolen by Russian intelligence. It's understood that Downer also remembers no specific mention of emails either. Tweet by Papadopoulos. But the cable came back to Canberra about an aide to Trump saying the Russians had some dirt on Hillary Clinton and were prepared to use it. The Americans weren't informed immediately about what Papadopoulos had apparently said to Downer. But when it became known that the FBI suspected a Russian hack of Clinton emails, the information was shared with, and God damn it, what is it doing? What the hell? It just did something. It reloaded the page. All right. Shared with Five Eyes intelligence partner. Cantor is now back in Jerusalem, working as a branch head in the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thompson, now his fiancée, is on leave without pay from DFAT. Downer is in London and has not been questioned by the Mueller inquiry. Fancy that. Some say it's very unlikely he ever will be. All right. And yeah, that's pretty much all the best of the shit I have. The other ones, some of it's about Parliament going after Facebook. I would suggest looking up that is Chinese billionaire Jack Ma up to no good, because it turns out we found out that Chinese billionaire Jack Ma is a card-carrying communist. Now, I don't, I guess at some point he has been asked about this before, or people have indicated that they are not comfortable with the idea of somebody that, being a party member, because then they, they would be answering to the party, and they're and then how could you be a capitalist millionaire if actually you're a member of the Communist Party? I could understand that. So thank you everybody for joining me. Just want to make sure that I got a lot of these articles out there and recorded onto YouTube. And yeah, now I haven't been looking at this is the first time I did this. I plan to have fewer tabs to go through and do this a bit more frequently. Most of this at some point I put onto the Discord server. I'll try to make sure I put that once this posts, I'll edit it and put it in the Discord server. Yeah, all right. So see you all soon. Have a good Sunday. It's time for me to start moving around and get a workout or something like that. Oh, whoa, there we go. Wait, one other thing. What do you think of the UN taking jurisdiction in Mexico? I actually think the UN will have that it will mean nothing. I think the UN. I don't think it'll mean shit. I think what's it called? I think that Mexico is so. The mayor of Tijuana said a day or so ago that he wants an official investigation into the people who organized all this. I'm thinking that we are going to see now what the electorate of Mexico is. I'm betting we're about to find out that Mexico is not. They don't speak with one voice. It's like AMLO might have his support, the PRI has their support and all that, but I'm betting we're about to find some stuff out about Mexico, like how much they don't like their neighbors and not necessarily us. Because no, Mexico can build. Mexicans don't pick fruit here. Mexicans build homes here. People visit Mexico from America and stay in shelters. So obviously, Mexicans can build shelters. But when they build shelters, they don't go south, do they? Obviously, a bunch of people need shelter and they need them built. There's people who keep investing in all these countries and then pulling their investments out. And so obviously this isn't about like Mexico's like, oh yeah, we're fellow Latinos and we are going to become the dominant power over Central America. That doesn't appear to be what they do. That's an American way of thinking. Like, yeah, if we pull these people into capitalism, eventually, I mean, it'll be like, we have like 10 more states. Well, that it doesn't look like that's what's happening. It's looking like there's elements of how they vote in that region of the world that are so heavily socialist, so heavily tribal. They just spurn, certain levels of progress and keep nationalizing companies. America is now, of course, starting to increasingly turn this way. This has always been a part of America, but it's increasing. There have always been people of European descent who wanted to shit all over free trade, they naturally were guided toward cartel economics because of their long period of time of manorial feudalism. As long as we deliver the wheat and the apples to the manor lord, he will give us cheese, and he will not fuck our daughters, and that when you live like that for hundreds of generations, it becomes just a way that becomes very natural. And we're seeing most of the world, they never stopped living like that. So it's very natural for them to want president for life Erdogan, president for life Xi. They don't know that different. That the Germanic, like, people who are like, no, you can't tell me what the fuck to do. That end of our society is becoming a smaller and smaller group, and they are now starting to become confined to a demographic voting cluster and a party. And that other people are like, well, maybe if we just yield to the cartel, or if we just set up a cartel for the good, then we wouldn't have this problem. Like PG&E. No. Like you see, if we just gave all the power of violence to the police, nobody will rob us anymore. As we've seen from our past articles, this is not necessarily so. All right. Later on, guys.